Thank you for tuning in and checking out Unlucky, a memoir. My name is Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. So this week, I figured we'd jump back in time a little bit to 2021, right at the tail end of the serious part of the pandemic. And things were reopened. I had talked about this before. I was living out of my pickup truck until it got impounded. And then I ended up crashing on a love seat in an efficiency apartment of a person I knew. And that was an interesting environment, to say the least. I'll get more in depth into that whole scenario at another point. But while I was there, I started feeling a pain in my lower back. And part of me just assumed I'd thrown out my back, pulled something, and it didn't help that I was sleeping on a love seat. But it just kept getting progressively worse. And there was multiple people that were offering to help as far as crack my back, whatever it was. I'm really grateful that never happened. But along that way, mind you, this was a small room with a little kitchen and bathroom, and that was it. So the person whose apartment it was, there was a bed in the corner, and the love seat was by the window. It really wasn't that big. Oh, and there was a recliner or a chair sitting there in the corner. Well, it got to the point where I was in constant pain, had trouble standing up, sitting down, walking, anything. So the person whose apartment it was decided they were going to let me use the bed for the time being until my back healed up, figuring that the love seat was doing it no good. I moved over into the bed, and then I didn't get out of it for another week or so. I laid there, and it got so bad. It just kept getting progressively worse to the point where I'd be propped up leaning against some pillows. And as the day would go on, and I would start kind of sliding down the bed a little bit to the point where I couldn't sit myself back up, and any phlegm or anything, I'd feel like I was choking, couldn't breathe, and I could do nothing about it. And no part of me, I couldn't move anything. I couldn't turn anymore. I couldn't use my arm because at the same time I also had an infection up here, osteomyelitis infection in my chest. So anytime I tried to use upper body, that was an extreme pain. And my lower back, I mean, I basically felt paralyzed. There was points where it would get a little better, and I would do my best to get up and try to stand using a cane and kind of try to figure out a way to get across the room to the bathroom. But other than that, like, I seriously didn't get out of that bed. Like, I was peeing in bottles. I know it's disgusting, but you do what you have to do. Amazingly enough, the people around me were very supportive and helped me through that situation. And we were still using at the time, and really put me at a point of relying on the kindness of others to make sure I didn't get dope sick. And that worked for the most part. I remember we got some money together, gave it to a friend of ours to go cop some drugs, and he never came back. And we were texting him repeatedly throughout the night. And he said he kept giving different deadlines and then not showing up. And then finally, it was probably about 5 or 6 in the morning, I was in such extreme pain because the drugs were no longer getting me high. They were keeping the pain at bay. I was in such extreme pain, I finally caved and asked the person whose apartment it was to call an ambulance. I really didn't want to go that route, but I finally decided that was the only thing I could do. So, mind you, this is the third floor of a walk up, and they showed up, and the EMTs came in and did their best to help me out of the bed. And they couldn't use a stretcher because of the way the apartment building was. So they had one of those hard backed, hard seated medical chairs with the tank treads on the back to go downstairs. And they put me in that, which was very, very uncomfortable considering the pain that was in my back and chest at the time. They got me down and got me into the ambulance and took me to the local hospital where I mean, my pain was off the charts at this point in time. I remember going in, and again, this can go back to the video I did on stigma. The doctor, she came in and immediately assumed I was drug seeking, even though I told her, I don't care if you give me pain medication or not, just figure out what's wrong. And she still, every time she would come in the room, because mind you, there's still COVID restrictions. Every time she'd come in the room, she'd turn the TV off that was in the room and tell me to pull up my mask. And not so politely either. She would like, pull up your mask and turn the TV off. So she assumed I was drug seeking, but decided to do an x-ray. And when I came back from the x-ray, there was still no change in her demeanor towards me. But they decided to do a CAT scan just to double down on their efforts, I guess, just to make sure they were positive nothing was wrong with me. I was just drug seeking. And she comes back still aggressive. Her demeanor was poor. And she says, well, there was something on the casket, so we're going to give you an MRI. And I said, that's fine. And I'm just laying there gripping the rails of the hospital bed in pain. I think at this point they'd given me some Toradol, which didn't touch the pain at all. So I get the MRI and I go back and I'm in the room, and this is all done ER still. And when she comes back in, seems to be very kind, and she goes, would you like some morphine? And at that point I looked up and I said, am I dying? And come to find out, I was really close, because the fact that her demeanor changed and now she's offering me opiate pain medication. I come to find out there was an abscess on my L4 and L5. At this, she decided to move me back out to an ambulance and transport me to a sister hospital that has a neurosurgeon on staff, because they were fearful that if this abscess burst, it could kill me. So needless to say, I get in the ambulance and now they're hitting me with fentanyl and whatever else to try to ease the pain as best as possible. I get to the other hospital, they rush me in, and they immediately put me on an IV antibiotic. And I ended up remaining in that hospital for about 90 days, trying to let this antibiotic take effect. At this point, I was completely immobilized. I couldn't get out of the bed on my own. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I was reliant on nurses for everything, helping me sit up, helping me move. It was a humbling experience. And amazingly enough, it wasn't enough to convince me that I needed to get off of opiates. As much as they wanted to try to wean me off of opiates in the hospital, somehow, some way I talked them out of it. And talked them into keeping me on the opiate pain meds. But partway through the stay in the hospital, at the time, I was basically unhoused. I had no insurance. And when they came in to do the consult with me about what was going on, before they came in, the pharmacy tech came in to explain to me what they wanted to do. And what they wanted to do was take me off the IV antibiotics, which were working. As they could tell, it was shrinking the abscess. And I was getting more mobility back over the time that I was there. But they wanted to switch me over to a different antibiotic that had a list of side effects as long as my arm. And when I asked the pharmacy tech, what would you do? He's like, I can't tell you what to do. All I can do is tell you do your research. So I took his advice and did all the research I could on this medication and found out this medication comes with a black box warning, is what the FDA put on drugs that have serious life-altering side effects. One of the side effects of this antibiotic is death. I forget all of them, but none of them are very pleasant, and they are all very life-altering side effects that could happen. So when the doctor came in to consult on what they wanted to do as far as switch me to this oral antibiotic versus the IV antibiotic that was working, I found out that it was mainly because I was uninsured, and on IV antibiotics, they had to continue to keep me in the hospital. If they switched me to oral, they could discharge me and I could continue healing at home. So I brought up everything I had researched, and I didn't go to like Joe Schmo's pharmacy website to research this. It was like the Mayo Clinic and other very reputable sources. And they had explained that if you're on an antibiotic that is working, do not switch to this antibiotic. And I told him I refused to switch antibiotics, and I remember the indignant look on his face, like, how dare you question me? And he immediately told me, he goes, you can't refuse. And that's when I decided to ask him to please put that in writing. And that's when he stormed out of the room saying he would have legal work something up. So that's one of the things I tell people all the time. Make sure you advocate for yourself. You got to remember, if you're in the hospital, your doctors, whatever, they work for you and it's taken a Hippocratic oath. So they must go by your decisions on your care. Make sure you advocate for yourself. Don't just take their word for it. Do research, especially in this day and age with the internet. And again, use reputable sources, but get all the information you can, because I've come to find out if you have 3 doctors in a room, they're all going to have 3 separate courses of action. So make sure you're well informed and make choices for yourself. Advocate for yourself. It's very important. Needless to say, that doctor never re-entered my room again throughout the rest of my stay. And nobody ever worked up any paperwork for me to look at saying I couldn't refuse medication. I ended up in that hospital, like I said, for 3 months, and leaving that hospital, walking with a cane, because even to this day, I can still feel the issue in my lumbar from the abscess. They explained to me that the abscess caused everything to swell and it moves everything around. Then when the swelling recedes, everything doesn't quite sit back the way it's supposed to. So I deal with sciatica and other things all the time. So I ended up there until before they released me. I had to start walking again, at least with a walker or a cane, and I accomplished that. And I remember getting out of the hospital and feeling no different about my addiction, feeling that I was going right back into it. And needless that abscess in my spine and in the chest came from improper IV injection, and the infection traveled to my lumbar and my sternoclavicular joint. And like I said, it wasn't enough to get me to change my mind about returning to active use, considering I was on opiates the whole time I stayed in the hospital. And like I said, I talked them into letting me remain on them when leaving. So I remember as soon as I got home, I kind of said I wasn't going to shoot up anymore. I'd only snort. That didn't last long. It was probably a day or so before I had a needle in my arm again. And I was off running and gunning one more time. So my addiction tried to kill me, and it wasn't enough of a warning for me to stop. That's how insidious this disease can be. With that, I'd like to thank you all for coming on this journey with me. I appreciate each and every one of you who follow these videos every week and come along this journey. Without you and without the people who have been in this path, I wouldn't still be here. So again, I appreciate you, and I'll see you all next week.